Hello, Vlad with you and a new author's story from my channel Amazing Stories. Pavel Ignatievich, your children have already gathered in the dining room. Tell them that you are late or will you come down now? Margarita looked at the man with slight sadness and melancholy. She was a simple housekeeper, but after the news that he had been diagnosed with serious illnesses, she felt uneasy. And she tried to make Pavel Ignatievich's everyday life as calm as possible, but he did not want this and continued to live as if nothing had happened. The only thing that worried him at that moment was the will that he was going to announce to his children. And that is why he gathered them all under one roof for his anniversary, although he had never done this before. Please tell them that I will be there soon. Let them settle in for now, pour themselves drinks. Good. And should I bring you anything? Thank you, no need. The man smiled, after which he left his office, slightly bowing her head. The owner turned his gaze to the cameras, which clearly showed the dining room. Having turned on the sound and settled into a chair, Pavel Ignatievich sighed and looked at the daughter of his two sons, who, not having time to enter his house, were already sorting out their relationship with each other. What do you even understand? Father will leave everything to me, because I am the only beloved daughter. I have always been there in difficult times. Sophia, the youngest of the whole family, was indignant. She looked with displeasure at her brothers, who were standing nearby and clearly did not share her point of view. The situation was becoming more and more tense with every second. Stepan answered sharply. When were you with your father in hard times? I don't remember you coming when he had health problems or when he needed support after his mother's death. You were just running around on your own to Rome and looking for another slick young man, and we were messing around with him while you were twirling your skirt there. Quote. Sophia looked angrily at her brother and said with a venomous asshole, when did you mess around with our father? As far as I know, while he was having problems, you brought your beast here and talked about how this house would soon be yours. You think it's normal. That is, you acted more worthily than I did. Very funny. Actually, you both treated him badly, so I'm sure I'll inherit it. I'm his best child and a role model for all of you. Unlike the two of you, I at least got some education. A complete one, not abandoned halfway. So roll your lips. Father will definitely appoint me as his successor. We'll see which of us will laugh last. Mikhail looked at his brother and sister with displeasure. He was sure that he would get the company. But in reality, the young man was nothing special. He was as flighty and a womanizer as Stepan, and as much of a shoe addict as Sophia. One could even say that he combined the worst qualities of them. Therefore, the question of leave the entire inheritance to him didn't even stand. What do you think you are? A womanizer from the ranks. That's who you are, Sophia snorted irritably. Who would talk? You are nothing at all. If it weren't for this silicone and daily visits to the dentist, you would be such a monster, no one would come within a kilometer of you. Sophia opened her mouth in shock, not finding anything to say. And just as she was about to answer, her father appeared in the dining room. A tense silence instantly hung in the air. All eyes were turned to him. He sat down in his place in the very center of the table and calmly said, Will you sit down or will you dine standing up? The children silently sat down at the table, looking at him in bewilderment. Pavel Ignatievich began to slowly eat his dinner, not even raising his eyes to them. Almost half an hour passed, when Sophia finally couldn't stand it. Quote, Dad, why did you gather us together? Just so that we could eat together. He looked up at his daughter and felt the reproach in her voice, then looked at one son, then at the other. For some reason, they were also looking at him with extreme concentration. Realizing that the situation was starting to get heated, Pavel Ignatievich put the cutlery aside and said calmly, No, not only that. I wanted to talk to you about the will that I had already drawn up and handed over to the notary's office for safekeeping. Quote, What happened? Do you have any health problems? Sophia suddenly asked with feigned alarm. Yes, a rather serious illness was discovered and it doesn't give me any guarantees. It could get worse at any moment, so I decided to take care of the issue of drawing up a will in advance. My God, Dad, what will? You still have a long life ahead of you, Sophia babbled, but then she stopped short and fell silent, seeing the displeased looks on her. A few seconds passed before Pavel Ignatievich decided to continue this not particularly pleasant conversation. I made a will so that my entire empire would go to one person, so that he would manage the company, while the rest would receive some monetary compensation if the heir himself deemed it necessary. The will was made with lawyers, attorneys and a notary, so you won't be able to argue with it. I made it in my right mind and sober memory. All the nuances are taken into account. Did you hear me? He looked up at the children, and they, one by one, nodded briefly in response, without saying anything. Everyone was waiting for the outcome. Who would inherit the enormous fortune? Who would get all the power? At that moment, Pavel Ignatievich suddenly fell silent and plunged into memories. He remembered very well how difficult it was to build the company. He had to work for years without days off and without a salary. He came home only to sleep, and during particularly busy times he stayed overnight at work, spreading out a camp bag right in his office. It took a colossal amount of time and effort to create and promote the factory. It was at that moment that the first health problems began to appear. He strenuously ignored them, continued to build his empire. Looking up at his children, he immediately felt that he had done the right thing when he decided not to leave them anything. And he was sure that if he had left them his factory, they would have simply ruined everything in the first year. They would have stolen everything into small pieces, would have fought over every penny that could be obtained. And realizing this, Pavel Ignatievich made a difficult decision for himself. He wrote a completely different person into his will, in whom for some reason he was 100% sure, although he had only seen him a few times in his life. Quote, Dad, are you going to continue to keep silent or will you continue? Stepan suddenly asked. His patience had clearly reached its limit. He was already waiting wearily for the moment when his father would voice everything. In general, so I decided to leave the company to Senya in full. And if she decides that you are worthy of receiving at least something, she will make a concession in your favor or pay part of some amount. Such is my will. There was a deathly silence at the table. No one had any idea who Senya was and how she could have ended up in the will. Sophia exchanged glances with her brothers and asked tensely, Who is this anyway? This is the first time I've heard of her. Are you kidding me? You can't leave your fortune to some unknown girl whom we've never even seen in our lives. You're not that naive, are you, Dad? Pavel Ignatievich just shrugged his shoulders. There was no joke in his words. He really did leave his entire inheritance to the girl who had recently come to his house to paint a portrait to order. It turned out simply magnificent and now hung in the most prominent place in the living room, delighting the owner of the house every time he returned from a business trip or after a hard day at work. Lord, Dad, tell me that you're not so crazy as to leave your inheritance to some mistress. Do you even understand that she simply led you around by the nose and that she will kill you for the sake of this fortune? Mikhail said through clenched teeth, trying to restrain his emotions. His father turned his gaze to him, after which he calmly and confidently said in response, "Kase is not my lover. She is an artist who came some time ago to paint my portrait. If you did not notice, it appeared in the living room and, as for me, it fully expresses all my natural charisma." During those few days while she was doing her work, I managed to talk to her. It turned out that she is a very nice girl, open, kind, knows how hard it is for ordinary people to earn money, and plans to get a second higher education to work in painting and architecture. And here she is, unlike all of you, knows perfectly well that no money comes easy. Therefore, I am sure that she will be able to properly manage my company. And this decision is not up for discussion. Are you crazy? Decided to leave the company of some artist? Quote. Sophia exclaimed, jumping up in her seat. She looked at her father with irritation, feeling how anger overwhelmed her. This is my final decision, so don't try to convince me otherwise. This is the right thing to do. Quote. How did you even get the idea to invite her home? Where did you find her? What if she's a swindler or something like that? Do you at least understand that she deliberately led you around by the nose, and you believed her? She didn't force me to do anything. And I found her on the list of graduates of the art school. You understand, I don't have much time left, so I decided to capture myself on canvas. While there is still such an opportunity, it is unlikely that you will do this after I am gone. So I took care of this issue in advance. Pavel Ignatievich lowered his eyes. Memories of Senya, who came to his house for the first time, surfaced in his head. Completely confused and not understanding why she was chosen to draw the picture. After all, her works were far from the best in the course. Good afternoon. Come in, don't be shy. Where would it be more convenient to sit? The man came out of his office, looking closely at Senya. The girl was exactly like in the photos of the graduation album. On her face the owner of the house couldn't help but smile, while Kasiusha just lowered her eyes, trying not to show that she was very embarrassed. Let's settle down somewhere near the window, so that the light falls beautifully. Pavel Ignatievich just nodded, after which he gestured with an index finger to invite her into his office. It was a small but fairly bright room. The desk was located right next to the window, and the light fell on it perfectly. Senya, smiling, flew by. Yes, this place will do just fine. She set up the Albert and canvas, and then began to prepare everything she needed. The atmosphere was relaxed, conducive to work, so the girl was sure that everything would work out. The entire time that Kasiusha was getting ready, Pavel Ignatievich literally did not take his eyes off her. It seemed that he was trying to find something in her that he desperately needed. But just what exactly? Several hours had passed since the start of the work. Senya was diligently drawing lines on the canvas, when suddenly Pavel Ignatievich asked, "Why did you agree to come to a stranger's house and paint him in his office?" You understand, there are many strange or, I would even say, sick people in this world. You could have gotten into trouble. Senya hesitated. She herself was not eager to come to an unfamiliar house, but the promised fee came in very handy. The girl sighed. You see, I would never do that, but I really need the money. Unfortunately, my mother fell ill not long ago, so now I earn money for her treatment in any way I can. Frankly, I agreed to come to you only because you offered a very high salary. Usually I receive clients in my studio, at the university, but this time I made an exception. I'm sure everything will be fine with your mother. Don't worry. Senya smiled. She did not know what to answer, so she simply continued to draw, paying attention to all the small details. Upon completion of the work, Pavel Ignatievich gave her a larger sum than he had originally promised, and promised to contact her again if another portrait was needed. Senya left her number and left this house, not imagining that she would find herself closely connected with him in the near future. Tearing himself away from his memories, Pavel Ignatievich noticed that the children were already crossing all boundaries, brazenly discussing wills with each other in his presence, which they seemed to be going to dispute. Lord, some beggar can't get everything. I'm sure this can be easily resolved in court, and everything will be fine. You'll see, you're just causing a panic in vain, Sophia said confidently, looking at her brothers. But Stepan didn't calm down. He knew that a properly drawn-up will would not be so easy to challenge, even if you hired good specialists. Do you even understand what you're talking about? Are you going to challenge a will drawn up by the best lawyers? Do you think everything will be as easy as you want it to be? Yeah, keep your pockets wide open. At that moment, Pavel Ignatievich simply got up from his seat and headed towards the office, ignoring the children's quarrel. And only at the moment when he was almost to the exit from the dining room, Sophia came to her senses and quickly called after him, "Dad, where are you going? We haven't finished yet, please stay." Quote. Pavel Ignatievich looked tiredly at his daughter, after which he replied, "I've said everything. My words are not subject to appeal. Understood." Quote. He turned and walked out, leaving his children confused and incomprehensible. "So what are we going to do now? Give everything to some girl?" Quote. Sophia asked irritably, turning sharply to her brothers. "Of course not. First, I suggest we find her, and then think about what to do. If she's smart, she'll give up on this whole idea herself." Stepan answered immediately, not giving his brother a chance to say a word. "I'll look for her, and in the meantime, you think about what to do next. We need to settle this as soon as possible, otherwise if something happens to father, it will be hard to fix later." Stepan looked around, winced and added, "That's it, I'm leaving. I have no desire at all to stay in this place." Quote. He moved toward the exit. Sophia and Mikhail followed him. Pavel Ignatievich watched the conversation and behavior of his own children through the cameras in his office. He understood that he was right in his decision. And slowly plunging into his anxious thoughts, the man did not notice how the company manager appeared behind him. Stepan Olegovich deliberately coughed to attract attention. Pavel Ignatievich shuddered, and then slowly turned to him. "Styopa, glad to see you. Any problems at work?" No, no problems. I came to congratulate you on your anniversary. And here is a modest gift. He held out a small package containing a beautifully wrapped table clock. Pavel Agnatyevich smiled and said sadly, "And my children did not give me anything for my birthday. They think that I have everything, and therefore I do not need such trifles." Quote, "They came, argued, left. I can't believe that I was such a bad father that I could not raise anything worthy of them. No, I don't think it's your fault. Perhaps you spoiled them too much at times, but we always want to give our children the best, so I can understand you." The smile on Pavel Ignatievich's face became even more exhausted. He was examining his watch when he heard the strange question. "Forgive me if I interfere where it is none of my business, but is it true that you decided to leave the business to some stranger? Don't you think it would be more logical to write a will to someone close? Well, maybe not even to the children?" But Pavel Ignatievich looked at him in surprise. "After all, this is my company, and therefore, my decision. Frankly, when I made the will, I was sure that after I announced it, my children would pay much more attention to me in order to earn my favor. I thought they would understand that the problem was in them and would want to fix the situation, but instead they made a decision that was completely incomprehensible to me." Stepan Olegovich nodded briefly. He himself understood that giving the business to the owner's children was far from the best idea. Everyone knew about their flightiness and irresponsibility. But, being the boss's right hand, the man was sure that the company should remain under his control. He worked there faithfully for so many years, sacrificed so much, did so much for the company to prosper and reach new levels. And now what? Now they just want to leave him with nothing. It seems to me that if you leave your business to a stranger, your empire will definitely collapse. She has absolutely no idea what to do and how to do it, has no idea how the internal processes are built in. Do you think that if you leave everything to the children, it will not collapse? Yes, they will spend everything in 6 months, then go bankrupt, then squabble with each other, completely ruining themselves. No, I definitely do not need that. It was all too hard for me to destroy it so quickly, even after my death. So you think it is better to give your business to a complete stranger? She will also go down the same path. Oh, no, believe me, I talked to this girl for several days, and she definitely will not do that." The manager looked at the boss with displeasure. He simply could not believe that he could be so easily removed from his roles and left somewhere on the sidelines. Something inside him clicked. Raising his chin, Stepan Olegovich quickly said, "Well then, I'm going back to work. You know, I've been swamped lately." Quote. Of course, Pavel Ignatievich answered briefly, turning away to his desk. Stepan Olegovich turned around and abruptly left the office. His own plan was already maturing in his head, a plan on how to win over the company and get at least some benefit from this whole situation. As he left the house, Stepan Olegovich heard voices. My God, we can't do anything now. Where are we supposed to look for this girl? And what can we say after we find her? He immediately recognized the voice of Sophia, who was always loud and dissatisfied. Stepan Olegovich came out of his hiding place. The children immediately fell silent, and suddenly the manager said, "I can help you in your search if you write a receipt stating that you will owe me a certain amount after you inherit." I do not intend to be left with nothing after this old fart dies. Quote. A smile instantly lit up Sophia's face. She extended her hand for a handshake, and that was the end of it. The game began. It was not difficult for him to find Senya, since he had taken part in the selection of artists, so he knew exactly which educational institution the girl was enrolled in. Then it was a matter of connections and small bribes on the spot. As a result, Stepan received the address and home phone number, which he immediately called. After several long beeps, the receiver was finally picked up. Hello, a slightly confused girl's voice was heard. Speak, I'm listening. Stepan Olegovich seemed to not believe that he had managed to reach her. He collected his thoughts and said in a rough voice in response, Senya, I want to warn you, you are in big trouble. A will has been drawn up in your name, which will be your death sentence. You will have to refuse it in favor of those who are truly worthy heirs. You have no right to claim it. Do you understand this? The girl immediately hung up, deciding that it was scammers calling, and did not pick it up again that day, not imagining that the problems were just beginning. Returning home after another order, Senya suddenly heard someone call her. Turning around, she saw a guy and a girl who were rapidly approaching her. Everything inside went cold. Excuse me, do we know each other? Or did you want to place an order? We have had enough of your orders already. You have done enough for us, the girl said irritably. But the guy quickly put her in her place. Stop it, Soph. Behave normally, you won't scare her. Stepan said she's not one to be timid. She just won't talk and that's it. You need to be more delicate. Maybe I should kiss her in one more place? He thinks to himself here. Just stand and be quiet. I'll do the talking myself. The guy turned his gaze to Senya, who didn't understand anything at all. She looked at the couple with a stunned look. Senya, we need you to renounce your father's inheritance. A few seconds of confusion, and Senya took a few small steps back, feeling threatened by them, and quickly said, You're getting something mixed up. I don't have a father and never have. My mother raised me. I need to go, I have a lot to do. The girl quickly turned around and wanted to disappear as quickly as possible, but the guy didn't let her do it. He grabbed her hand, holding her in place, and then said in a more angry and dissatisfied voice, Listen, I'm not going to play any games with you. You just have to refuse the inheritance. That will be the end of your problems. And if you decide not to refuse, the consequences will be very sad for you and all your loved ones. Senya abruptly pulled her hand away, realizing that the situation had gone beyond all reasonable limits. She straightened up and said firmly and confidently, What do you think you're doing? Are you threatening me? I'll file a report with the police and I won't tolerate such treatment. Are you crazy, maybe? If you come near me again, there will be consequences for you. Understand? After these words, she turned around abruptly and walked towards her house. Stepan shouted after her, If you refuse, you can count on a fairly decent amount. We won't offend you, so think about it carefully. But she didn't answer. She didn't want to get involved in anything like that. Moreover, this whole story with an unknown man and a will seemed like some kind of nonsense, but it couldn't happen to her in real life. Several days passed. Now Senya's mobile phone started to receive dozens of messages indicating that she needed to refuse the inheritance. Sometimes with demands, with threats, and sometimes even requests. She even stopped opening them, so as not to wind herself up unnecessarily. One early morning, she picked up the phone without looking at the screen, and suddenly heard a familiar voice. Quiet, calm. Senya, don't hang up. I just want to talk to you. No threats. I just want to help you understand the whole situation. You're confused, aren't you? Senya sat up in bed, finally waking up. Okay, talk, but keep it short and to the point. Of course. You've already realized that there is a will in your name, and one of your clients left it. And by the way, he left his children with nothing. He is sick, and therefore no one knows how much time he has left. That is why everyone pounced on you. But, to be honest, I would not advise you to refuse, because a very large company with very high turnover is at stake. And what do you want from me? If you are calling so that I do not refuse, then why? The thing is, I propose that you marry me. You will get the company, and I will help you figure everything out. You will have a stable income, and you will never have to work again in your life. You will be provided with everything you could wish for. What do you say? Yes, yes. The manager of Pavel Ignatievich's company decided to change his mind. At some point, he realized that he did not just want money, but wanted the entire company. And marrying Senya was just a way to gain power. And then he would figure out how to get rid of her and keep everything for himself. The plan seemed to him the most ideal. But could any girl refuse such an offer? Of course not. In any case, he was sure of it exactly until the moment he heard her voice on the other end of the line. Sorry, your offer is simply absurd. I have a fiancé, and I do not plan to change him. Thank you, of course, for telling everything as it is. And if my decision changes, I will call you. All the best. Senya, listen, Stepan Olegovich wanted to continue the conversation, but short beeps were heard. Cursing, he realized that his brilliant plan had failed, and he urgently needed to come up with something new. Senya continued to sit on the bed, looking out the window, not understanding why the will had names. She had simply drawn a portrait and never communicated with the client again. How could this have happened? She decided to tell Kostya everything. Returning home from work, she found her fiancé cooking fish soup. He smiled and invited her to the table. Sit down, dinner is almost here. How are you doing at work? I have made a lot of masterpieces today. Senya rarely talked about her successes. Why? Well, partly because Kostya's work was not going well. He was a sculptor, but this profession turned out to be even less in demand than an artist, especially given the lack of a constant flow of clients and connections in this field. The guy dreamed of a great future, that he would definitely get rich. If not through a career as a sculptor, then in any other direction where he might get lucky. Senya worked days and nights, took on large and small jobs, made discounts and attracted clients in every possible way, while he just sat in one place and waited for money to fall from the sky. Realizing that she did not want to talk about work, Senya immediately moved on to a story about how some rich man wrote a will in her name. And now she did not fully understand how to act correctly in such a situation. You know, I think I should just refuse. He has nothing to do with me. Senya looked up at her fiancé, expecting to hear words of support. But instead, he said something sharp and rude. Do you want to voluntarily leave me in poverty? What if we have a child? Do you even think about our future? If you have the opportunity to get money, just like that. For the fact that you exist, you don't need to refuse it. Take it for us, for our future, for the children, after all. Senya saw how the bone's eyes were burning, and at that moment she regretted that she had even decided to start this conversation. Sighing, she answered sadly, "Listen, I have no desire to take this inheritance. It's not mine. I'll refuse it anyway, and you and I will achieve everything ourselves." "Really? We are strong, independent, and everything will be fine with us." The guy seemed to have been replaced. He silently rose to his feet and looked at her with displeasure, rudely said, "I thought you were smarter, but it turns out you're just a stuffed fool who doesn't understand what she's giving up." After these words, Kostya turned around abruptly and left the kitchen, leaving Senya completely bewildered. She was sure that in a couple of days he would cool down and everything would fall into place. But instead, Pavel Ignatievich's children contacted him, deciding to involve the groom in their schemes in order to get the desired result as quickly as possible. Kostya arrived at the appointed place to talk to Stepan. It was some strange deserted place that gave goosebumps. Stepan was calm and serious. Quote, "So what do you want from me?" Konstantin asked warily, looking from under his brows. "You must get rid of your fiancée so that she no longer stands in our way, and for this you will receive a fairly large sum." Quote. Kostya was taken aback. Get rid of? But could he really do that to her? Noticing the confusion on the groom's face, Stepan handed him a piece of paper on which was written such a large figure that it would be enough not only to buy an apartment, but also for several years without a poor, dissolute life. If you can, you will get it any way you can. I don't care, the main thing is to be quick. Kostya looked at the piece of paper for a couple of seconds, after which he asked uncertainly, "Where is the guarantee that you will not deceive me? I am exposing myself to criminal liability, and if I do not have money for a good lawyer and to bribe doctors, the consequences will be very dire." Quote. Stepan calmly took an envelope out of his pocket and handed it over. "This is in advance. If you do everything cleanly and quickly, you will get everything else immediately, as soon as this girl is no longer in cash. I guarantee it." Kostya agreed. He took the money and began to think about how to get rid of her. He calmed himself down quite simply. After all, it was she who refused the inheritance, did not want money, so it was her own fault that he had to take such a step. At the same time, the elderly businessman became much worse due to all the stress he had experienced. He was hospitalized in extremely serious condition. Sophia and Mikhail arrived as soon as they found out about it. And the first question the daughter asked, looking at her dying father, was, "What day should I hire a funeral agency?" "Well, so that everything can be done quickly. I don't want to mess around and wait for a long time later." The doctor looked at the girl in shock, not understanding how she could treat her own father like that. And then, shrugging his shoulders, he said, "In general, everything will depend on how long the patient lasts in this condition. We provide him with all the necessary assistance, but we cannot give any time frames or guarantees." Quote. Sophia only nodded briefly, and then, without asking anything else, left the room, irritably scolding her brother. "Do you even understand that everything is coming to its logical conclusion? If Stepan does not get rid of this heiress as soon as possible, as he promised us, the consequences will be very sad." Quote. "I think everything will work out. I am simply sure. Has he ever let us down?" Sophia sighed. Until the very end, she did not believe in her brother and could not even imagine what kind of scheme he was pulling off. At this time, Senya continued to rush between the rich man's last will and the desire to give up everything, just to live peacefully on. Returning from work a little earlier than Kostya, she decided to watch the news. She rarely turned on the TV, because she simply did not have time for such simple joys of life. But then, from the very first seconds, she was in complete shock. A photo of the very businessman whose portrait she was depicting appeared on the screen. Senya turned up the volume and began to listen attentively. This morning, our millionaire's condition worsened. Pavel Ignatievich is in critical condition in the Central City Hospital. The prognosis is disappointing. But is it really possible that a person who has done so much for our city will leave us so suddenly? Kasyusha felt her heart skip a beat blow. She didn't understand why, but she was simply incredibly drawn to that hospital. Drop everything, she quickly got dressed and called a taxi. And who is that girl standing in our businessman's ward? His daughter? The nurse quietly asked the doctor, looking at the girl in bewilderment. Kasyusha was fussing around in the ward, adjusting the pillows, mumbling something under her breath. The doctor shrugged. No, not his daughter. I've seen his daughter. Words can't describe such a... And I'm seeing this girl for the first time, but she fusses around like she's a relative. It's good that at least someone started visiting him, otherwise the children never showed up in the hospital again. Yes, indeed, at least one relative is nearby. It's a pity that he doesn't have long left. His body is very weak. Nothing helps, it doesn't get better. Maybe a couple of weeks. Senya sat in the ward for some time, telling Pavel Ignatievich about what her life was like. And with that day came at the first opportunity, spending several hours a day with him. Of course, Kostya knew where exactly the girl went. She did not hide it. And at some point, the realization that he needed to act as soon as possible became so obvious that the guy made up his mind. Having waited until his bride went to the hospital once again, he dialed the number of his doctor friend and said with slight excitement, "Valyuk, hi. I'm here on a very serious matter. Listen, remember how you once told me about the poison that is mixed into food to make it look like a person did not die from poisoning? Can you get it for me right now? I won't offend you with money, but no one should know about this." For a second, there was silence on the other end, and then a cheerful voice was heard, which seemed too relaxed for such a strange and sudden request. Do you know how to start a conversation? In theory, I can. Why do you need it anyway? I need to get rid of someone here. A man has stood in the way of my big money. Don't worry, you'll get a good percentage. I'm not worried. It's better not to have conflicts with me. Who knows what a person with a medical education and access to special drugs is capable of? So how much do you need anyway? For one person? Yes. You can bring it now or send it with someone. I'll be there in half an hour. Wait and the money in advance. Okay. Kostya hung up and dialed Stepan. He didn't want to spend the reserve that he had been given as an advance, so he told the potential heir about his plan and that certain expenses were required for its implementation. Stepan transferred the money without asking questions, but in the end he said, "If she's still breathing tonight, you'd better never catch my eye again." Got it? Kostya swallowed the lump in his throat and, trying not to panic, replied, "Of course, everything will be done in the best possible way, I guarantee it." Well, until next time. Stepan hung up. A satisfied smile spread across his face. He was already anticipating how the inheritance would pass to him. On the way to the hospital, Senya decided to stop by the church and light a candle for the health of the client. She did not know why, but she was sure he would definitely come to his senses and be discharged from the hospital. So, having prayed, she left the church with a strange feeling of lightness and peace, as if all the problems were left behind. Tell me, why do you come here every day? Talk to him, tell him something. He is in a deep coma, and it is unlikely that he will ever come out of it. He does not hear you, does not see you, does not feel you. He does not have long left, and you only hurt yourself by coming here day after day. Do you understand? Senya looked at the nurse with bewilderment. She guessed that she wanted to open her eyes to the truth, but this truth was not hers. For some reason, she was sure that Pavel Ignatievich would definitely wake up. That's exactly how she answered the nurse, receiving only a humble look and a sad smile in response. Excuse me, but who are you and what are you doing in a patient's room after the end of the reception hours? A young doctor entered the room, looking at Senya with bewilderment. The girl immediately jumped up from her seat, realizing that all this looked ambiguous. Excuse me, I was allowed to sit here for a while. Quote, are you his daughter? The doctor asked, not taking his eyes off her. No, I just visit him when possible. Mistress, the doctor kept asking, which led her into a complete stupor. She hesitated for a second, then said in a confused voice, what did you think? Of course not. I hardly know this man. It's just that his children don't come to him, he doesn't have a wife, and he's a very good person, and he shouldn't be left alone. That's why I decided to come here until he gets better. Senya smiled timidly, to which the doctor only sighed wearily. Do you know that they don't give him any guarantees? In fact, he's practically dead already. Judging by his tests, Senya turned so pale, she hadn't been told about the severity of the situation yet. But there is at least one chance. I don't think things should be that bad with him. You just didn't know him. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. She looked at the young doctor with trepidation and longing. When suddenly he said encouragingly, I also think that something is wrong here. That's why I was sent to this hospital for an additional examination. Unfortunately, you will not be able to attend it, so I ask you to leave the room. Quote. Of course, I can sit in the hallway. Senya grabbed her bag and left the room without waiting for an answer. The doctor just shook his head, after which he began to perform all the necessary manipulations to assess the patient's condition. Half an hour later, he left too. The girl immediately jumped up to him. Well, what happened there? Did something become known? The doctor raised an eyebrow and looked at her in bewilderment. Listen, Senya, she added right away. Listen, Senya. You should go home today. I can't say anything definite until the tests are done. More time is needed to understand what exactly is happening and, perhaps, adjust the treatment. Come tomorrow, maybe something will be known. Well, there is a chance, everything will be fine. Senya, I can only say that there is always a small chance. Overwhelmed with feelings, she rushed to hug him and only a few seconds later realized that this was not entirely normal. Pulling away, she read the name on the badge and quickly said, Sorry, Dmitry Sergeyevich, I will definitely come tomorrow at the first opportunity. All the best to you. Quote. Senya left the hospital in high spirits. Dmitry Sergeyevich, are you sure that the drug prescription needs to be changed? Perhaps you should consult with your doctor. The nurse looked at the new guy with alarm, feeling like an accomplice to some kind of official crime. The doctor turned a displeased look on her, and then said through clenched teeth, "Listen, your doctor has already written him off. Said that he is not healthy. Even if we change the treatment plan, but there are no improvements, will this lead to any serious problems? I am sure that it will not. And if something does happen, you don't have to worry. I will say that you had nothing to do with it. Now, please, administer the drug intravenously." Quote. The nurse nodded, and then began to perform the manipulations. And suddenly the patient opened his eyes sharply. Senya returned home a little later than usual. Kostya was waiting for her, and as soon as she entered, he immediately jumped up to her. "No, no, don't undress. They're already waiting for us at the restaurant. I reserved a table just for the two of us. We haven't gone out anywhere for so long. And what about her?" "Some date that I forgot about," Senya asked confusedly, feeling awkward at that moment. "Of course, today is the anniversary of our acquaintance. A very important date, and we must definitely celebrate it. Do you need to get ready?" "No, listen, I'm sorry, but I haven't prepared anything as a gift," the girl said confusedly, gradually blushing. "I don't need anything. The main thing is that you're with me." They settled down in the restaurant. Kostya had taken care in advance to ensure that there was poison in the glass of champagne. Raising the first toast, he smiled so sincerely that he did not arouse any suspicions. The guy could almost taste the money, but then a passing lady caught the girl's hand. The glass flew to the floor. Its contents spilled a couple of meters. The shards glittered in the evening light. The stranger began to apologize. The waiter immediately ran up to clean everything up. Senya tried to help him. At the same time, Kostya was blushing with rage and anger at everything that was happening. He was ready to pounce on the bride with his bare hands. But the guy did not dare to do this, understanding what the consequences could be with so many witnesses. Realizing that the plan had failed and that they might not give him a second chance, Kostya disappeared from the city that same night, leaving Senya a note that he had gone to look for himself. The girl was depressed, but for some reason she did not feel very sad. She simply continued to go to the hospital, visiting Pavel Ignatievich. One evening the man finally said, "And yet I did the right thing when I made a will in your favor, daughter." A tense silence hung in the room. She thought she heard it now. "Daughter, you said I was your daughter. How come?" "I didn't actually have a father, and my mother never talked about you. The thing is, your mother is not your biological mother. She adopted you after my beloved fiancé, and your real mother died after a difficult birth. I couldn't take you away. We were not officially married, and I was not mentioned anywhere in the documents. So, while I was trying to somehow come up with a solution, you had already been adopted. I tried to find you, I searched for all these years, and only recently found you. It happened by chance. I was looking through the news about graduates of art schools, looking for young talents. And then you. I immediately felt it. You are my soulmate. I did an examination on the very day you came. And it showed absolute kinship. At that moment, I decided to make a will specifically for you. I'm glad I found you. But why did everyone demand that I renounce the inheritance if I'm your daughter? Because no one knew. Everything was done in great secrecy. I was afraid that you might be threatened, but I couldn't even imagine how low my children had sunk. Senya turned pale, because she didn't know that there had been an assassination attempt on her. That's why her father's confession came as a real shock to her. Pavel Ignatievich sighed and continued his story. And so I assigned you security so that nothing would happen to you. They were there all this time. They were the ones who replaced the poison your fiancé had prepared with simple sugar. You would have been safe anyway. And then the puzzle came together in her head. Now she understood why Kostya had been so angry that evening and disappeared so suddenly that night. And here, take this. The father held out the disc. There is all the evidence written down that your fiancé was in cahoots with my children. So you should choose your partner better. Senya was embarrassed. She believed anyway, without the disc, without evidence. Everything inside her was turning over from the realization of how much she had missed. Senya, Dmitry Sergeyevich came into the ward and looked at her with a smile. Glad to see you again. You come here just like we do to work. The girl smiled back and looked down at the floor. And already at that moment Pavel Ignatievich realized that there was sympathy between the young people. It was visible to the naked eye. Kasyusha continued to look after her father just like that, not because of the inheritance, not because of some sense of duty, but simply out of love and gratitude that he had finally found her. Even after so many years, he was recovering quite quickly. After 3 weeks, Pavel Ignatievich was finally discharged home, but he had to continue treatment. Kasyusha moved in with him, helped him when necessary, but also saw Dmitry more often. And 2 months later, he proposed to her. Kasyusha agreed. The wedding was held quite quickly. It was very chic and beautiful, and as a gift for such a significant event, the father organized an exhibition of his daughter's paintings, which quickly became a topic of discussion in knowledgeable circles. Sofia, Mikhail and Stepan showed up only 6 months after everything happened. They ran out of money to live on, and they came to their father to ask for more. But he refused them, advised them to start developing their own business, so that they would understand on their own skin how difficult it is to earn money. If you like the story, please support me by pressing the thumbs up button. One simple action, but it is very important to me. All the best to you.